there, Niamh Connolly is my name. I'm a CBT therapist based in Dungarvan, County Waterford, and I'm thrilled to be speaking today at this amazing event Shine organised by Shona.ie. I love the idea of an organisation that's empowering and educating and inspiring young girls, and I'd love if there had been something like that when I was a teenager. When I went to college, I was studying psychology and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And it took me quite a few years of different jobs to kind of find my way in the world. And eventually, after quite a while, I hit on CBT, which is Cognitive Behavioural Therapy. And I've been working now for 10 years in private practice here in Dungarvan. Since Corona, I've been entirely online, doing everything via Skype. So we've had to change up and kind of, move with the different circumstances, which is a really important skill. Just like Shona had to do with the Shine event, take it from a physical event where everyone would have met up into something virtual, but it's still just as powerful. So I've been asked to speak just about what is CBT and maybe explain a little bit about it. C stands for cognitions, which is thoughts, and B is behaviours, and T is therapy. So it's a talking therapy that works largely with thoughts and behaviours. But there's another aspect to it too, which is feelings. So if somebody, for example, was to come to me with, they were struggling with anxiety, maybe social anxiety, which is a particular kind of anxiety. They were very nervous in front of people. They weren't able to stand up and make a presentation at work. We'd look at different areas. One of the things that I would ask them about is their thinking. So what kind of thoughts were they having about doing their presentations? Are they thinking things that are helpful and encouraging them to do the presentation, or are they thinking negative and kind of pessimistic thoughts, assuming that the worst is going to happen, not having confidence in themselves? And we would explore then the effect that those thoughts were having on them, how that was affecting their behaviours. So if you're walking in to do a presentation and the thought in your head is, this is going to be a disaster, what do you think is probably going to happen? Are you going to do your best? Are you going to shine at that presentation? Probably not. Because what happens when you think a negative thought? All the time, our brains are listening. There's a kind of an interaction going on between our brain and our body and our brain. So our brain is listening to the sensations that come up from our body. Like say if we're hungry, that will send a message to our brain that we need to eat. Or if we see a picture of like advertising at night on TV, we see a picture of a big juicy burger and we go, oh, I'm starving. That sends a message then down to the stomach and it releases maybe hunger hormones and you get your stomach rumbling at 11 o'clock at night. So there's a two-way communication going on all the time. So when you're thinking, going in to do your presentation, this is going to be a disaster, your body, it's like it's listening and it hears that this is going to be a terrible event and it goes into fight or flight mode to prepare you for this disaster. So it floods you with adrenaline, which is what we would normally use to escape from a threatening situation. But if you're walking into a room to do a presentation, you're not trying to escape, you're trying to talk. But what effect does that adrenaline have? It makes your heart pound, it makes maybe your stomach go into a knot, you can get maybe a heavy feeling on your chest. That's a very common symptom. We can get flushed, our breathing. We can get kind of shallow breathing. And then what does that do to your thought? This is going to be a disaster. How are you feeling now about doing the presentation? It's even worse. So now you're starting to feel nervous. You're feeling apprehensive. So there's a really unhelpful loop starting. And we would look at starting off with the thought, this is going to be terrible. I feel physically shaky and unwell going in here to do this, and what might I end up doing or behaving? What action might I take in that situation? I might be in sick, I might say I have a sore throat and I can't talk, I might try and avoid or get out of the situation. So you see the way there in CBT we break down each situation and we look at the different aspects of it. What are the thoughts that you're thinking about? What are the feelings that those thoughts then can kick off? And what effect do those feelings have on your behaviours? So we can separate out, if you're stood in the doorway of your conference room, or if it's a class presentation, you're outside the door of the classroom, you're about to go in and speak, and then you're like full, and you can feel overwhelmed. CBT will help you break down the situation into the different chunks. Chunking is something that we're very big on CBT. Lots of you know Dolly Parton. She's one of my favourite people. I like to call her the patron saint of CBT, because one of her songs is One Day at a Time, Dear Jesus. And I like to say that to my clients that I work with, one thing at a time. So let's just take the thoughts first, then we'll take the feelings, and then we'll take the behaviours. We never try and do 2 or 3 or 4 things at the same time. So when you break something down, it helps you work on it in an easier and a simpler way. CBT, I'm always saying to my clients, we're quite lazy. If there's an easy way of doing something, if there is a less labour intensive way, we'll find it. Because life is difficult enough, everybody faces challenges. So we try and break things down, and then we look at the different aspects. So let's look at maybe thinking for a minute. One of the common things that often happens is when we're upset or we're facing a difficult circumstance or a challenging situation, and let's face it, we're all in really difficult circumstances right now with coronavirus, particularly in schools, because you're in and you're out, and exams are being changed and moved around, and you're not seeing your friends, you may feel disconnected. So it's a very, very difficult time. So when we're in difficult times like that, our thinking can become unhelpful. And there's a thing that we call in CBT unhelpful thinking styles, and they're a really useful thing to know and understand. So for example, a thinking style is catastrophizing. You might have heard of that, where whenever there's a suggestion or a new situation, you immediately think the worst thing is going to happen. So you're maybe going out for the first time, or you're going to can you remember the first time you were going to a disco? Remember when we were able to go to discos and go out, or to party, or 16th or an 18th? And you might have thought, oh my God, it'll be terrible. I won't know what to say to anyone, or I won't know what to wear. Or, you might have automatically assumed a really negative worst case scenario thoughts. That's called catastrophizing. Another kind of unhelpful thinking style is mind reading. So going back to the example I was giving of giving a presentation, you might give your presentation, and because you felt a bit nervous or anxious beforehand, you might think, oh, they all think that was terrible. They all think I'm stupid, or they all think I'm useless. And we project our own fears and insecurities into other people's heads. Something that's really important to remember is, what are most people thinking about the vast majority of the time? Ourselves. So we overestimate the amount of time and attention that people give us. We're very consumed with ourselves. We're obviously trying to put our best foot forward and do our best in situations. And that's what most people are doing. But we can get very caught up in others. And I think in our teens as well, our peer group is really, really important. They're who we look to. They're who we want to connect with. And we're socially, that's a very primitive drive in us. We're social animals. It's a survival instinct to belong and be part of a group. And that's why bullying can be really, really hurtful, because it goes against our most primitive instinct to not belong. And it's why we should always be really careful not to exclude people, always to try and include people. So coming back to the thinking styles, another thinking style is one called the mental filter, and we're all very prone to this. So say, for example, I say to you, you go into school and you have 8 classes, 7 of the classes are brilliant, you get on really well and you like them, the teacher's in good form and it's all lovely. And then the last class, the teacher is in foul humour and you're tired, it's the end of the day and it's just awful, you get in trouble and it's just a disaster of a class. You come outside, you meet your friend, she's come for another subject. She goes, well, how was your day? How'd you get on? You go, ugh. What's the thing you're going to focus on? That last class. And you'll be giving out and, oh, she was giving out to you. Ugh. And how's your mood as you're talking about that last class? It's going to lower, it's going to impact your mood. And what's happened to the other 7 classes? Gone, as if they never happened. And again, that's a primitive instinct. If you think back to caveman and, as we evolved, what did we have to pay attention to? We had to pay attention to threat and danger and the unpleasant situations, because back in those days, they were the things that could have killed us or wiped us out as a race, like a saber-toothed tiger, not having food, not having shelter. So we are programmed to kind of scan and find negative information. Great if you're a caveman, but in today's modern world, not so helpful. So if you understand about thinking styles, if you know the names like mental filter, like catastrophizing, predicting, mind reading, you can say to yourself when you're stressed about something or worried or upset, you can stop and say, hang on a second, is this a helpful thought? A great way to suss out if a thought is helpful is to say, if this was my friend, somebody I care about in the exact same situation, is this what I would say to them in this situation? So go back again to the presentation. You're standing outside the classroom, you're about to present something to the class, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is terrible. They're going to think I'm awful. I'm going to be awful. This is going to be a disaster. And if you stop and think, would I say that to a friend in the same situation? Probably not. So we need to be in our own corner. If you think about who's with you, who's your best friend, often you'll have one person or a few people that you might identify with. But actually, the only person that's with us from the moment we're born until the day we die is ourselves. It's not something we always realize or kind of reflect on. So we need to be our own best friends. We need to be in our corner. We need to be almost like a cheerleader, spurring us on, encouraging and supporting the way we do for other people. We tend to have lots of energy and kind of understanding and patience with other people and not so much with ourselves. So something that's really important to say, maybe at the start of the day, am I being my own best friend here? Am I supporting myself to get through today? Or am I criticizing? Am I giving out to myself? Or am I putting myself down? And self-criticism is another thinking style that's really, really common. I see it all the time in the clients that I work with. And let me tell you, if it worked as a way of getting us through things, I'd be out of business. I wouldn't have any clients. It really, really doesn't work. We kind of think we're egging ourselves on, but in fact, we're making ourselves feel worse. So self-criticism is something to look out for, and it's something to try and avoid. So using the question, what would I say to a friend in that scenario, would be really helpful. You might say to me, yeah, Niamh, but how do you know when I should do this? How do you know when I need to think a different thought? Or how do you know when I need to change? Your body will tell you. That's the feelings part of the cycle that I talked about there at the beginning. When we feel threatened, when we feel sad, when we feel upset or anxious or worried or scared, all the emotions, we kind of say, oh, it's all in your head. It's not. It's actually all in your body. Think about how you feel when you feel down. You feel kind of heavy, laden. When you're sad, when you're anxious, it could be in your stomach. It could be in your heart rate. Like I was describing earlier, you could have sweaty hands or being flushed. Our feelings can be very physical. So if you're tuned in and you pay attention to your body, so in the morning, you might do a quick body scan. You might go, okay, how's my heart rate? How's my stomach? How's my breathing? How's my head? Just those 4 questions, like 10 seconds. Just breathe and tune in. And if you give yourself that little break first thing in the morning, and then remind yourself, I am in my own corner today, you will be streets ahead because you'll have paused, you'll have grounded your body. When we get anxious and upset, we can go into what I was saying earlier, fight or flight. We're full of adrenaline and kind of panicky. But what we want to be in is the system that's called rest and digest. That's when everything calms and our blood rate, our blood pressure slows down, our heart rate slows down, all our kind of physical symptoms when you're kind of nice and chilled out at the weekend, that's rest and digest. And by stopping and pausing and paying attention to your body, you can put yourself into rest and digest. So there's a few ways of doing it. So think about your thoughts. Am I thinking a helpful thought? Think about your feelings. Do I know how I'm feeling? Am I giving myself the opportunity to listen and tune in and pay attention? And then what message are the feelings telling you? Are they telling you that if you're feeling low or kind of lonely, okay, what can I do about that? How can I fix that? And that brings us to the last piece in cognitive behavioural therapy, which is the behaviours or actions. So something that can happen when we get stressed and anxious, like I was saying, our heads can kind of go in and over a spin, we can kind of get overwhelmed. We tend to get caught in loops that are like problem describing. You're saying, oh my God, I miss the girls, or I haven't seen anyone in so long and it's so terrible. I'm here stuck at home and I'm so lonely and I'm so bored. And we are caught in a loop of problem describing. What is that helping? It's not solving anything. It's not fixing anything. And as you're going around in that loop, what's that doing to your body? Remember your primitive brain, the bit I'm talking about? That's listening to what you're saying, and all it's hearing is terrible things. So it's like a really unhelpful loop gets set up. So what could you do instead? Okay, what we could do is problem solve. So instead of talking about how bad a situation is, because again, if you were with a friend and they were saying, oh, I feel bad about something, your instinct would probably be to go, oh, well, how can we fix this? How can we make it better? So if you're missing your friends, if you're lonely or isolated, what would help make that better? Maybe reach out to somebody, try and connect in. Have you been good at answering WhatsApps, and have you been, keeping in contact, or have you let contact go? So have a look at the situation and look at your behaviours and think, is there anything I could do here that would be a bit more helpful? So by breaking down every situation into the three aspects, the thoughts, the feelings, and the behaviours, it gives you a very clear path in each one of what might help, what might make that situation better. So CBT is all about breaking things down into small, manageable chunks, and then working constructively on each one. You don't always have to work on all three. It might just be, if I change the thought, it's kind of like bowling. If you have a really, sticky, unhelpful, fairly nasty thought, that everyone hates me, and if you get in and work on that thought, that can take out lots of other thoughts with it. It can really help you feel better, and it can encourage you to act in a different way. So by tackling one aspect, it's kind of like dominoes. If you ever see these world champion dominoes where one tile can set off hundreds of thousands of tiles, they're insane. That energy can be used like in CBT, where you tackle one thing, you can get lots and lots of good results and effects. So what would I recommend as a little kind of a snapshot of CBT? Okay, first thing in the morning, take that pause, take 10 seconds and do a quick body scan. Listen to the information that your body is giving you. So you're tuning into how you're feeling. Then once you know how you're feeling, if you're feeling great, that's really nice, and that's something good to feed back to yourself as well. I feel really good this morning, off I go. But if there's something lurking, if you're feeling uneasy, tune in, pay attention to the thought and see, can you identify the thought? Can you label it with a thinking sin? Am I catastrophizing? Am I mind reading? And then try and reframe the thought. What would I say to a friend? What would I say to somebody that I care about in that situation? And then finally, is there something I can do in my behaviours or actions that would help in this situation? So what could I do differently that might make this situation better? So you're trying to identify the issue and then move from problem describing to problem solving. And it's one step at a time. Remember that Dolly Parton is our patron saint. And I won't sing for you, but I hope that you will find some of that a bit useful. I have a website, Transform CBT, with loads of resources and links, loads of free stuff. And I'm on Instagram as well, if anyone wants to find out more information over there. It has been a real pleasure talking to you today, and hopefully you found that interesting, and the very best of luck with the rest of the school year.